Welcome back to the deep dive. We're all about getting straight to the source material to give you the intelligence you need. Today we're tackling something really important, the fight against age-related muscle loss. We want to zero in on the things we can actually control, the modifiable factors that help maintain strength and independence as we get older.
And this is, it's critical stuff. Losing leg muscle strength, which often falls under the umbrella of sarcopenia, well, it's a major red flag for older adults. We're looking at sources, including the CDC, estimating that 1 in 3 adults over 65 falls each year.
1 in 3, wow, that's a lot.
It really is. And maybe the more sobering statistic is that for up to 30% of those falls, the outcome is serious. We're talking life-changing injuries, head trauma, hip fractures, things that really impact quality of life. Basically, when you lose that leg strength, you lose stability, mobility, you lose a bit of control. So this dive is about figuring out how to hang on to that control.
Exactly. So our mission today is to sift through the research, and we've got a good stack here, from Harvard-affiliated studies like the Framingham Offspring Cohort on diet, to physical medicine guides on specific exercises, even major NIH dives on vitamins. We're aiming to pull out the actionable knowledge, the blueprint, really, for keeping muscles resilient. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is sarcopenia?
Right. So sarcopenia is essentially defined as that gradual sort of involuntary loss of your skeletal muscle mass and strength that happens specifically with aging.
And it creeps up on you, right? It's not like it happens overnight.
No, definitely not. And the timeline surprises people. It actually starts subtly in your 30s. You begin losing roughly 3% to 5% of muscle mass per decade after age 30. It's like, your muscle savings account starts slowly dwindling without you necessarily noticing right away.
But then it picks up speed later on.
It does, yeah. After age 60, that rate of decline really accelerates. And when you look at folks over 80, some studies estimate that, well, anywhere from 11% up to maybe even 50% of them meet the criteria for sarcopenia. It's incredibly common.
We should probably clarify some terms here, too.
Yeah.
You hear sarcopenia, but also muscular atrophy.
Good point. Muscular atrophy is just the loss of muscle size or mass. It can happen at any age, maybe from an injury or just not using the muscle. Then there's dynapenia, that's just the loss of strength, not necessarily mass.
So sarcopenia is both.
Yeah, sarcopenia usually involves both losing the muscle mass and losing strength, often even more strength than you'd expect just from the loss of mass alone. It's the whole package.
And the symptoms people might notice, they're pretty practical day-to-day things.
Very much so. Obvious muscle weakness, finding it harder to climb stairs, walking noticeably slower, maybe needing to push off with your hands to get out of a chair. Also, balance issues can crop up, and sometimes you can actually see muscles looking smaller, particularly in the arms and legs.
Okay, and what's driving this? What are the sources saying about the underlying causes?
It's complex, a mix of factors that come with age. Our sources point to things like a reduction in the nerve cells that actually signal muscles to fire. Hormonal changes play a role to lower levels of things like growth hormone and testosterone. And there's also this chronic low-level inflammation that seems to increase with age, which isn't good for muscle health.
So how do doctors figure out if someone has it? They don't just guess, right?
No, absolutely not. These specific screening tools, one that comes up a lot is the SARC-F questionnaire. It's pretty simple, just 5 questions.
The SARC-F, what does that stand for?
It's an acronym. Strength, assistance with walking, rising from a chair, climbing stairs, and falls. Basically asking how much difficulty you have with those key activities.
Okay, that makes sense. But beyond asking questions, how do they measure it objectively? Because that must guide treatment.
Exactly. That subjective part is just the start. Then you get into objective tests. You often hear about the hand grip test. That's a pretty standard measure of overall strength. But for lower body function, which is so critical for independence, the short physical performance battery, or SPPB, is really key.
SPGB, what does that actually involve? Is it more involved than just a grip test?
Oh yeah, much more functional. It's designed to specifically test lower body strength and balance. It involves 3 main parts. They time how well you can hold different balance positions. They measure your walking speed over a short distance, usually 4 meters. And then they time how quickly you can do 5 chair stands, getting up and down from a chair 5 times without using your hands.
Ah, okay. So it really simulates everyday movements.
Precisely. And a low score on that SPPB test is a really strong predictor of losing independence, needing more care, and even higher mortality risk. So it's a very valuable tool.
All right, let's shift gears to what we can actually do about this. Starting with diet, specifically protein, the research seems pretty consistent here, right? More protein helps.
Yes, there's strong evidence showing a positive link between getting enough protein and holding on to lean muscle mass, and importantly, leg strength as people get older.
Where does that evidence come from?
Well, a good example is the Framingham Offspring cohort study. Looking at that data, researchers found that higher intake of total protein, and also specifically animal protein, was clearly associated with people having more lean mass in their legs.
Okay, so animal protein seems directly linked to building or maintaining mass. That makes sense given things like essential amino acids, leucine.
Exactly. Leucine is a key trigger for muscle protein synthesis. But there was an interesting twist in that Framingham data regarding plant protein.
Oh, what do they find?
Well, they found that plant protein intake by itself wasn't associated with more lean mass. However, kind of counterintuitively, it was associated with greater quadriceps strength.
Huh. So not more muscle, but stronger muscle. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a bit of a puzzle. The researchers had a couple of ideas. One theory is that plant-rich diets tend to be more alkaline, which might help reduce low-grade inflammation and preserve muscle function, even if the size isn't increasing. Another thought, maybe more likely, is that high plant protein intake is often just a sign of a better diet overall. These people are probably eating more fruits, vegetables, getting more micronutrients, and that whole package supports muscle function.
Right, so it could be a proxy for just a healthier lifestyle overall. That makes sense. Given the push towards more plant-based eating, though, should we be concerned about relying too much on older data emphasizing animal protein? Are there effective plant-based strategies emerging?
That's a really relevant question now. I think the consensus is still evolving, but what seems clear is that quality protein matters regardless of source, and for older adults, the amount and timing are especially crucial. The main goal is hitting that threshold needed to actually stimulate muscle repair.
Okay, so what is that threshold? What's the actionable number people should aim for?
The recommendation you see most often for older adults is aiming for about 20 to 35 grams of high-quality protein at each main meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
20 to 35 grams per meal. What does that look like in real food?
So you're looking at roughly 4 ounces of chicken, fish, or lean meat. Or if you're going plant-based, that's maybe around 1.5 cups of lentils or beans, or a good serving of tofu or tempeh.
And does the timing matter? Like, should we eat more protein earlier or spread it out?
Timing definitely seems important. The research points towards distribution being key. Older muscles can become a bit less responsive to protein, something called anabolic resistance. This means you likely need a larger amount of protein in a single meal to really kickstart that muscle building process effectively. So getting, say, 30 grams at breakfast, 30 at lunch, and 30 at dinner is probably much better than having just 10 grams at breakfast and trying to make it up with 70 grams at dinner.
Right, spread it out evenly across the day.
Mm.
And lastly, on the diet front, poor nutrition itself is a risk factor.
Absolutely. Diets that are low in protein are a problem, but so are diets generally low in fruits and vegetables. And diets high in ultra-processed foods seem particularly bad, creating an environment that likely accelerates muscle loss.
Okay, pillar number 2 for what we can modify, vitamin D.
Mm.
The data here seems to show a really strong connection between low vitamin D and worse muscle function, right? And the deficiency rates are quite high.
They are surprisingly high. If you look at the English Longitudinal Study of Aging ELSA, they studied over 4,000 adults aged 60 plus. They found that over half, 53.7%, had what's considered insufficient vitamin D levels that's below 50 nanomoles per liter. And maybe more worryingly, over a fifth, 21.8%, were actually deficient, meaning below 30 nanomolar.
Wow. Over half insufficient and over 20% deficient. And how did that connect specifically to muscle strength and function in this study?
Well, the association was pretty clear. That deficiency level, being below 30 nanomole, was significantly linked with impaired muscle strength. They measured this using hand grip strength and also with poor physical performance on that SPPB test we talked about earlier.
Can you unpack the why a bit? We know vitamin D is crucial for bones, but how does it directly impact muscle?
Yeah, that's a great question. It turns out our skeletal muscle cells actually have specific receptors for vitamin D, called VDRs. Vitamin D metabolites bind to these receptors. So when you're deficient, the signaling system doesn't work as well. Plus, vitamin D plays a role in regulating calcium within muscle cells. And calcium is absolutely essential for muscle contraction. If calcium handling is off because of low D, you get weakness and fatigue.
Okay, that makes the connection much clearer. It's directly involved in the muscle's ability to contract properly. Let's revisit those numbers from the ELSA study again.
Sure. The difference in weakness rates was really stark. Among those who were vitamin D deficient, below 30 on Morel, about 40.4% had low hand grip strength. Compare that to the group with sufficient vitamin D levels, only 21.6% of them had low grip strength. It's nearly double the prevalence of weakness in the deficient group.
That really highlights the importance of knowing your levels, especially if you're in that older age group.
Exactly. The big takeaway here, clinically, is that fixing a vitamin D deficiency, especially getting people above that 30 ml level, isn't just about protecting bones anymore. It's a concrete strategy that could also help protect muscle function and performance as we age.
So we've got proteins for the building blocks, vitamin D for maybe helping the machinery work, right?
Yeah.
But the foundation, the absolute core intervention, has to be exercise, doesn't it?
Absolutely undisputed. Diet and nutrients are crucial support, but physical activity, specifically resistance training, is the primary way to both prevent and treat sarcopenia. You just can't supplement your way out of being sedentary.
And there's solid data backing this up.
Oh, definitely. A large NIH study, for instance, found that older adults who were regularly moderately physically active had significantly lower odds of having impaired muscle strength and impaired physical function compared to inactive folks.
Significantly lower odds. What were the numbers on that?
The results were pretty impressive. For impaired muscle strength, the odds ratio, OR, for active individuals was 0.65. For poor physical function, like doing badly on the SDPBB, the OR dropped even further, down to 0.30.
An OR of 0.30. So help me translate that. That means being active reduces the likelihood of poor physical function by how much?
It means the odds were reduced by about 70%. Just by being regularly active, that's a huge protective effect from simply moving your body consistently.
And the flip side is also true, right? Inactivity creates a downward spiral.
It really does. It's a classic vicious cycle. You move less, your muscles get weaker and smaller, atrophy. That weakness makes you even less inclined or able to be active. This increases your risk of falls, contributes to metabolic problems, and that just feeds back into making the sarcopenia worse. The goal of exercise is to break that cycle.
So what kind of exercise are we talking about? Is just walking enough, or does it need to be more targeted?
Walking is great for overall health, but to specifically combat sarcopenia and rebuild muscle, you need resistance or strength training. That's the stimulus that tells your muscles they need to adapt and get stronger, or at least maintain what they have.
And the physical medicine guide you looked at, they emphasize making this safe and functional, especially for seniors who might be starting out.
Yes, absolutely. Safety first, but also focusing on exercises that translate to real-life activities.
Let's get specific then. You mentioned chair-supported movements earlier. What are some examples?
Right. Using a chair for support is a great starting point. Compound movements are key things that use multiple muscle groups. So squats are fantastic, even just partial squats, holding onto the back of a sturdy chair for balance. The sit-to-stand exercise, just practicing getting up from a chair without using your hands, is maybe the most fundamental functional exercise. And if someone needs a bit more challenge, you can do things like a chair deadlift, using a resistance band looped under the feet and held in the hands that works the whole backside of the body safely.
What about things targeting balance and specific movements, like climbing stairs?
Good point. Single leg strength is vital there. So exercises like controlled reverse lunges, where you step back one leg at a time while holding onto something if needed, are great. Also, simple isolation exercises like calf raises to strengthen the ankles, hip abductions moving the leg out to the side, and hip extensions moving it back help with hip stability. And even seated knee extensions and hamstring curls using your own body weight or light ankle weights can help.
And progression is key, right? You don't just do the same thing forever.
Exactly. You have to follow the principle of progressive overload. Start small, maybe just 1 or 2 sessions a week, doing one set of 10 or 12 repetitions of each exercise. Then slowly, you need to make it harder. That could mean adding another set, using stronger resistance bands or light weights, or, importantly, gradually reducing your reliance on the chair support as you get stronger and more stable. The muscle needs a reason to keep adapting.
Okay, so we've hit the big 3 modifiable factors: protein, vitamin D, and strength training.
Right.
But what if someone is doing all that? They're eating well, their D levels are good, they're exercising, but they still feel persistently weak. Is there something else that could be going on?
That is a crucial question, and it brings us to something called peripheral neuropathy, or PN. We have to mention this because its symptoms can look almost identical to sarcopenia, but the cause is different. PN is basically an umbrella term for damage or disease affecting the nerves outside of your brain and spinal cord, the peripheral nerves.
And when those nerves are damaged, it messes up the signals.
Yeah.
Exactly. It can disrupt the motor signals, telling muscles to contract, leading to weakness. It can affect sensory nerves, causing numbness, tingling, or poor balance. And it can even impact autonomic nerves, controlling things like blood pressure or sweating.
And what usually causes this nerve damage?
Well, the single most common cause, globally, according to our sources, is type 2 diabetes. Chronically high blood sugar is just toxic to those peripheral nerves over time, often starting in the feet and lower legs, diabetic neuropathy.
But diabetes isn't the only cause, is it?
No, definitely not. There's an overlap with some lifestyle factors we've already touched on. Alcohol use disorder can directly damage nerves. Nutritional issues are also implicated, not just deficiencies, but sometimes excesses of certain B vitamins like B6 can cause problems. Deficiencies in B1, B12, vitamin E, and copper are also linked.
And then there are other causes like infections, autoimmune diseases, injuries, and sometimes the cause remains unknown. They call that idiopathic neuropathy.
So the key point here is the overlap in symptoms: weakness, muscle wasting.
Precisely. Because PN can cause muscle weakness and even visible muscle atrophy, someone might look and feel like they have sarcopenia. They feel weak, their muscles might seem smaller. But the root problem might not primarily be the muscle tissue itself failing to rebuild. It could be the nerve signal to the muscle that's faulty.
Which means the treatment approach would be different.
Exactly right. That's why getting an accurate diagnosis from a physician is so critical. If the main issue is nerve damage from, say, diabetes, the focus has to be on managing blood sugar, potentially medications for nerve pain, and addressing the underlying cause. If it's primarily sarcopenia, then the heavy emphasis stays on optimizing protein intake and really pushing the resistance training. You need to target the right system. Hashtag UP Outro. Okay, so to kind of boil this all down, the actionable intelligence we've gathered today really points to tackling age-related strength loss on three main fronts that you can modify. First, really pay attention to getting enough protein and getting it timed well throughout the day. That 20 to 35 grams per meal target is a good benchmark. Second, keep an eye on your vitamin D status. If you're deficient, especially below that 30 mmol mark, correcting it is important not just for bones, but likely for muscle function too. And third, maybe most importantly, consistent progressive resistance training is non-negotiable. It's the direct stimulus your muscles need.
So here's the final thought we want to leave you with, something to chew on. We've seen how conditions like sarcopenia muscle failure and peripheral neuropathy nerve failure can cause very similar symptoms, like weakness and loss of function. We also saw they're often linked by the same underlying issues: chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes, general metabolic problems, poor nutrition, maybe even chronic inflammation. So it raises this really interesting question: are we actually dealing with two totally separate diseases of aging here? Or are we maybe just seeing two different ways, one affecting the muscle, one affecting the nerve, that the same fundamental metabolic and lifestyle challenges manifest as we get older? What will you investigate further?